Hi, and welcome to the Low Carb Logic podcast. Today we have special guest Lars Konge from Canada, who is a hardcore carnivore and a hardcore entrepreneur. And we're going to have a discussion about how he's been doing and what advantages he's had out of carnivore and what advice he's going to give all of us. And Lars, you had some major life changes in the last year, 2 years, I think. Some divorce, some other things. What has carnivore helped you, or has it helped you get through those difficult times and changes?
So I was just a normal guy. I had a construction business and did a lot of drinking in my 20s and 30s. And the first time, so I had gone through about from age 25 to 35, I was competing in CrossFit, and I was in a really healthy part of my life, but I was also very conventional, call it my inside the matrix years. So I experimented through with paleo diet, Atkins diet, and kind of got pretty knowledgeable about like standard models of health and fitness at that age and went through those. And the first time I had ever heard about completely carnivore there was a CrossFit athlete who was doing only meat. And at the time I was doing paleo, which is meat, but also fruits and veggies. So I was eating a lot of like root vegetables and chicken and turkey but like cottage cheeses, like still a wide spectrum of food. And I think one of the things about carnivore is it brings food right back to a really narrow set of things to eat, which I believe would be like biologically in line with how we would have lived for 99% of our time on the earth, right? So in 2016, I heard the podcast with Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan. And at that point, my son was 1. I have 4 children. He was my 3rd child. And drinking just was not sitting well with me anymore. Every time I would drink, my conscience would basically attack me afterwards. So I started kind of plotting spiritual change. But at that point, my entire life was still built around drinking and socializing and going out with different business groups. I was finding it very hard to escape that. And then in 2018, I pretty well knew that divorce was imminent, and I was living in a big city, Vancouver, Canada. So I decided that I needed to get out of the city if I had any hopes of not having my kids dispersed. A small town I felt was a better strategy for me to continue parenting post-divorce. So we moved from the city to the country in the Okanagan Valley, beautiful little spot. We moved Boxing Day of 2019. But basically, when I moved, there was no more happy family dinners anymore. We were still together when we moved for a while. She had her own traumas that she had to go through for a while before I could separate from her. But at that point, I'd heard lots about this carnivore diet at that point, and I had kind of come to terms that was the next health and fitness thing I was going to try to change my life. So I started on the carnivore diet at the end of 2019. Up until that point, I was starting to eat more and more steaks. So it was like, I didn't go right into it right away. I kind of went into it slowly at the beginning. When I started eating more steaks, everything started to change from that point for me. And in 2020, when the pandemic happened, that really shut down all society for a couple of years. That's when I went deepest into my carnivore. That by end of 2020, then I was separated. And then I just started finding the routine of it to be the most beneficial to me. It was the least amount of time I could put into food was the carnivore diet. least amount of shopping, least amount of cleanup. And I started to feel better and better. So at that point, I moved into an RV on Vancouver Island, and it was a busy time in my life. I was doing my real estate license, and I was working construction. So what I started to do a heavy amount of training, and I really started playing around with different protocols. And like some of them I found to be highly effective. Like one of the first protocols that I tell guys about is called the rule of 6. You get to pick 6 things that are going to go in your mouth. So it's like protein, fat, butter, salt, water is 5. And then the 6th one, you can pick coffee, you can pick something else. And as I started to uncover different time modalities and different restrictions on my diet, I would lose a couple % of body fat very quickly, and then I would plateau again. So I started playing around with different weight loss routines with cold water and burpees and different times of the day to work out and different fasting protocols. So I had never fasted before carnivore. Even on the paleo diet, the entire methodology around food, especially in fitness sports, is very like we grow up with 3 meals a day, right? 3 meals a day, and that's like a time. Now I call it the feminist psyop, right? It's like a control mechanism to get you around the table and get control on you for half an hour, right? And in the fitness communities, I still notice that dogma, like, well, you got to eat for fuel. So I had never fasted. And when I started fasting, I kind of realized that, well, it's basically just another fitness exercise, but maybe it takes 2 days or maybe it takes a week. And as I played around with the fasting, I just continued to unlock new gains in my body. So what they told me was that my energy would crash. I wouldn't have energy to exercise. And I started finding that was true at points in a fast. But at other points in a fast, for example, I would be able to max my push-ups up and get a PB. So that led me into kind of wondering why that was. As I started to unpack the hormonal benefits of fasting, I learned that, fasting and autophagy happens. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, sorry, Sam, you're on mute. You've muted yourself.
I muted myself. Sorry, I was just clarifying. So were you hitting PRs on push-ups while you were fasted?
Yeah, so I noticed that up to about hour 72 of a fast, I can hit That's a good time for me to go after a PR. It's the best time.
And then do you feel like there's just one more question on that. Do you feel like it's a relationship with like reps, or do you feel like it correlates to like the weight
and bodies
with more weight? Yeah.
No, I think it correlates to the hormonal pump that we get. So like you'll see that we get, I think they measure it in these numbers, take them with a grain of salt, but like a 200% increase in growth hormone somewhere around hour 48 of a fast, right? So when I read that, I was like, well, there's so much hormones in our body and they're so finely attenuated. I'm like, maybe other hormones will also be peaking. So I started trying to do my PR workouts when I would do a 48-hour fast, and I would do them on the first or second day. And I would say mentally, it would always allow me to tap into regions that I couldn't get into when I was just in my regular eating routine.
That's actually super fascinating.
Yeah. So then from there, I started building my protocols. So I went through, like, every month I would do a different protocol and I would design it slightly different. And then I thought I was insane because I was like, it flew in the face of everything I had learned for the 10 years I spent competing in CrossFit. So I brought in another guy that I used to compete with, and he's an RMT and nutritionist and also based guy, trusted him. So he would try my protocols. And, I had worked out with him for 10 years alongside him. I knew him really well. And, so I sent him a couple over and he tried them. He's like, yeah, I PR'd my push-up. He goes, I haven't PR'd a push-up workout in years, he said. So from there, I had a little group of friends that I would send my protocols to, and we would really experiment with either an endurance sport. He's a big mountain climber and hiker, and I would do long hikes in the mountains myself. It was those long hikes in the mountains that really started making me question everything. So I just started thinking that endurance was tied into fasting, and I started doing all my workouts fasted, whether intermittent, and then I would plan my long duration workouts, but I would always stack a multi-day fast into them. And from there, I just really started to feel that you can perform very well while fasted, and you can maybe you're going to go through periods when you're fasted and doing a long workout where you're low energy and you're not feeling great. But for the most part, I found a lot of hormonal gains. Like, we have strength gains, but we also have hormonal gains, right? Like, as our bodies become more efficient and lean, they do everything better, from shedding sun to sleeping to nutrients. We absorb nutrients better. So that was kind of the deep version of my my carnivore journey.
Lars, let me just because I noticed you shared something on X during the week here, which kind of refers to the things you're talking about with hormonal changes, and you were talking about 72-hour fast, and we can see here on this based on the research. You can see that autophagy and human growth hormone maxes out at about 75 hours. So it confirms exactly what you're saying, that probably maxing out on your reps and things.
And I take these graphs with a big grain of salt. And I wish somebody would do a study on the fallibility of all of these studies, because, for example, they're going to tell you that autophagy, and that's some of the fasting data that I push back on. They're going to tell you that autophagy peaks around 72 hours. But what I've noticed, some of the fasts I've done now is like, I'll wait a period of time after, the last crap stool has come out of my system. So the last fast I did, I still had small bits of stool coming out of my system at hour 96 of a fast, right? On day 4, I still had a little piece come out. So then, and I've done this with clients who have diseases also. So then what I say is, let's fast for 4 days after the last bit of stools come out of you. And I kind of, so in my carnivore journey, I had something happen to me that was like, it was revelatory. I hadn't eaten sugar. I was really, really clean in 23. And then at Christmas time in 23, I had burnt my hand in November of 23. So I had like 2nd-degree burn all over my hand and up my arm. And I was fasting and it was healing well. And it was completely healed, and the new skin had covered it. And then by Christmas time, I ate a whole pile of sugar at my dad's house for a week. At my dad's, I probably ate like 12 cookies a day. Like, chocolate chip cookies were around all day, and I love chocolate chip cookies.
Probably 12.
You're cookie. Or what did he say? You guys ever seen that guy?
What's that?
The Costco guy.
Oh, who's that?
The guy and his kid, they make videos at Costco, and he's always like, it's the double dip chocolate cookie or something like that. It's so funny.
Well, excuse me, I'm a huge cookie guy. I love cookies. So then I ate all the sugar, and for the first time I started I had a work trip to Vancouver after Christmas. And I was driving down to Vancouver, a 5-hour trip, and I noticed this burning sensation in my hand. And it was stressing me out because I didn't know what it was. So I was like putting butter on it. And I was like, what is going on with my hand? So you kind of see the scar still. But from there, I got terrible eczema on my hand. And the eczema came on, took about a week for it to cover my entire hand. And it would like wrap from the top of my hand and the top of my fingers. Like the skin on the top of our hand is super thin compared to the skin on the bottom of our hand, on our palm, right? And so I could see that, and I didn't even fully know what it was at the beginning. And then I figured out it was eczema, but I could see that it was like trying to wrap itself right down into the palm of the hand. And it was blistering and it was like painful. So I'm like, okay, clearly my body does not like the amount of sugar that I've just put into it. So I'm having some sort of a reaction to that, right? So I'm like, I sat with it I probably had the eczema for a month and wasn't going away. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to fast it out. So I did that fast and I went into the fast and I said, I'm just not going to eat until it's gone. However long that takes, I'm not eating until this eczema on my hand is gone. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd have to de-blister it, and like it was actually a horrendous little sickness or injury, whatever you want to call it. So then, I start my fast and I know not to expect anything on day 1 and day 2. And, I'm really looking at it. But on day 2, I'm like, okay, it's, the blisters don't seem to be as painful. Day 3, and I journaled the whole thing and I'm like, okay, day 3, burning sensation is gone. No new blisters, right? Day 4, no more burning, no more new blisters. Day 5, healing. So it was on day 5, I had no more stool in my system. And then on days 6, 7, and 8, it healed like Terminator 8, like the movie Terminator 2. It healed so fast, so I could see autophagy healing in real time on my hand, because autophagy, for the most part, happens inside of our bodies. We don't see it and we have no connection to it. It's a huge eye-opener for me. And it taught me that autophagy, it's, yeah, sure, they can say it peaks, but it's like when they do a testosterone test, they're just taking a little snapshot of your testosterone and it's a window in time. It's not giving you the full picture.
No, Lars, do you think that this process, if you manage to get children into it, like you had mentioned about the hockey team that you coach, if it was one of your children, do they follow the same sort of in general as yourself now? Or is it sort of sometimes?
I think I heard on your guys' Spaces Corner that children are born in ketosis, right?
Yes.
The longer we have never been in ketosis, if it's been 2 or 3 decades, you can imagine that our own ability to heal has been dramatically slowed down, just like an obese person's ability to run a mile would be dramatically slowed down. So when you take a kid, if you take a 10-year-old kid, he's been in ketosis sooner than a man has. So as his body can actually recover a lot faster.
I found a picture of Lars after he had eczema.
Yeah, right.
There you go. Yeah.
I don't do fasting campaigns for kids.
No, so maybe not necessarily fasting, but sort of a ketogenic or carnivore diet.
Yeah.
How does that work?
I was wondering the same. Like, do you influence it? Do the parents do they, like, how does that? Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, so I have a basic set of rules. There's no more breakfast. Breakfast is a complete psyop. My kids don't eat breakfast. They drink a bit of water and they go to school. You actually want kids need to get a little bit hungry so that they can eat their first meal and get a substantial amount of protein in it. What people are doing with breakfast is they're putting carbs into them right away. Just a huge mistake. If they're going to eat breakfast, it should be protein only. So like I have 4 children and their ages 17 to 5. And I have fed children all different ways. I've fed them wealthy and married with a nanny and meal planning. And I have fed them homeless and poor. And we're just eating hamburger for the next 3 nights because it's all we can afford. And having that, so my oldest 2 girls, they ate inside the matrix and they still eat pretty standard American diets, although my influence does wear off on them. But my younger 2 kids, like my youngest daughter, she's been carnivore. She was 1 year old when I moved from Vancouver. So she was 1 when I started my carnivore. And like, she can still eat liver. We get attenuated out of primal foods. So like, you know how if you took a piece of liver to the average guy, you put it in his mouth and it would be disgusting to him, right? But if you took a 6-year-old tribal boy in Africa, nomadic tribal boy, and his dad just killed an animal, he would run for that warm liver and he would love it. It would be like ice cream to him, right?
Yeah.
So we get our hormone, every single thing we put in our mouth produces a hormonal response. And that hormonal response just gets trained and ingrained over time. And I see this with guys that I coach. Like when I get a guy in who's 320 pounds, his disconnection to satiety is a lot more extreme than a guy in who's 10 years younger and he's only 30 pounds overweight. And I have all these little nutrition protocols and tests that I start putting onto them to recapture their satiety and their hormones. And like another thing I see with guys when they come in is they'll fat. So for me in Carnivore Academy, there's two ways to get into it. You got to pay your fee. And the first thing you have to do is you have to do a 48-hour fast. Everybody, it's the same for everybody. It's a 48-hour fast, Sunday night to Tuesday night.
Can you explain why?
Because you need to pause carbohydrates almost like as an emergency button on 99% of human beings today. They've had carbohydrates 3, 4, even 5 times a day for multiple decades. It's addiction. And they don't even, it's addiction. They don't even understand that they're horribly addicted to a poison. So the first
scare is so it's you know, for us it's very obvious and we've all been there and now we're the other side. So it's easy for us to be like, you know, just stop eating carbs and then your life will come back together. But for those which are, you know, if you guys are currently eating carbohydrates 5, 6 plus times a day, it is a scary thought. But Lars's point with the fast is to mainly, like he says, pull the emergency stop, and then once you start producing that first ketone of your life, nearly from your adult life, you will start to feel a change and your hormones will start to return to normal. And Lars, I'm pretty sure you can carry on about that first meal after.
Well, yeah, so I can see by how much protein they can comfortably eat on the Tuesday night after their first meal. I can basically understand how metabolically destructed they are from their satiety. So if their satiety rejects the meat and they get super full from a half a pound of it and they feel like they're gagging. That's a common thing, guys who are over, like, if you have more than 50 pounds of body fat on you, you are very distant from primal proteins. You might think you're eating them, but you're really not. You're probably, even guys are probably eating 100 pounds a year of protein, right? It's like 20% of what it should be for the average person. Yeah. And they're malnourished, but more than that, everything we put in our mouth, even before we put it into our mouth, produces a hormonal response. That's our satiety at work. So when you start uncovering how people get locked in satiety, so they can't even eat protein effectively. So eating protein is the same as push-ups, squats, and burpees at the beginning. They can't do very many at all because they're very out of shape, and they can't eat very much protein either because their satiety is so out of shape.
Lars, just a quick question. How many, what kind of hit rate do you have? How many do you manage to get to stop your program already in the fasting stage? Is this a good filter to filter out the ones who don't have enough determination, or how does that work?
It actually works. So they're always afraid of it. And so it's two things. They always tell me at the beginning in the onboarding or in the sales process, they'll always tell me that they fasted before. And then after they've paid and when they're ready to start the program, then they have a ton of fear about the 48-hour fast. It's just a little bit of mindset work that we stack up around it. And I can get any guy through a 48-hour fast. And it's the most crucial step to health recovery. It's the 48-hour fast. I've tried 72 and I've tried 24. And the 72 gives them too many early wins and then they lose weight. I've had guys lose 30 pounds in the first 2 weeks and then they go back to eating their normal way and they fail. So now what I do is, you know how they have pharmaceuticals that are timed release?
Yes.
Well, I do timed release fasting on a 12-month time horizon. So
Can you explain what that means?
So I build them up. So the first 2 days is fasting. And then throughout the whole course of the year, I take them through intermittent fasting and I take them through prolonged fasting. So every season we do a prolonged fast and it's more days than we did before. So 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 6. And then we do one of my clients just did a 6-day fast. And after so it's not just fasting, it's all the little habits. If you're going to do a prolonged fast, you want to put a whole bunch of mindset work into that period of time that you've chosen, because people are going to pick a period of time where they have the least amount of distractions in their life. I have a lot of divorced people in my crowd. So they're going to fast when they don't have their kids, right? They're going to fast when they don't have a crazy week at work. And we take them through that, and also how we break the fast. That's the best opportunity to reset satiety. So what we do for the second prolonged fast that my guys go through, the 4-day, when they break that fast, they're breaking with a whole series of meats that we've fermented in the program with them as part of the course. They're going to break the fast with an ounce of raw, rotten ribeye. And they're going to put that in their mouth and they're going to suck on it, not even swallow it, just suck on it. And this is times that I'm telling them this is you're going to be alone for this meal, and there's mindset work that we do around it. We're really trying to reset the satiety hormones. And then from there, we do raw liver. And what I notice through these protocols is their overall protein consumption goes up. So guys who can only eat at the start with me, people who are quite heavy can only eat half a pound, 3/4 pound per day of beef. And then they're telling me I'm completely full and my mouth can't even chew it. I feel like gagging, right? So it's quite interesting to see because not only are we trying to get people more healthy, but we're trying to get 500 pounds of beef into them because they've been malnourished for so long. And if you take the nutrient profile of beef and stack it up, it's high, but not only is it high in nutrients, it's high in consumption. It's like the only food that you can easily eat every single day. What happens to our bones when they get proper nutrients every single day? Our bones and our connective tissues, those are the things that start getting stronger.
Lars, why do they have to eat rotten meat and raw liver?
Doesn't
That's a good question.
So in our primal journey, if you've spent an amount of time being super hungry and super uncomfortable outside, you realize that modern transportation and modern refrigeration technologies have disconnected us from primal eating. When we store food easily forever, we're disconnected from the bacteria. So if you take meat and if you let it go bad, bacteria come into it and it affects the meat, right? When you eat that meat, you're repopulating your gut with all of these healthy bacteria. And it just seems plainly obvious to me that if you were a hunter-gatherer, my favorite, I talk a lot about the Comanches. The book Empire of a Summer Moon was the most instrumental exercise and nutrition book I've ever read. And it has nothing to do with exercise and nutrition. Because let's say you're crossing North America on the Oregon Trail and you're gonna eat meat that's not good frequently. And like you see this with animals, right? They'll come down and they'll eat a deer on the side of a hill. They can just devour up rotten meat without any ill health effects to it at all. Why are humans outside of that? We're not. So when I started eating rotten meat, I was actually at year 2 of my carnivore journey, and I had a whole bag of steaks, and I was sleeping in my pickup truck doing this job in the summertime, and I just kept eating this bag of steaks, and it was like 40 degrees out, and I had no refrigeration, and I was scared of it. I was smelling it, and I was like, fuck, is this going to make me super sick? What's that?
Did it have like a smell?
Yeah, it starts kind of getting that, I call it the plum smell. It's like,
Bit like rotten meat.
yeah, there's a lot of different types of rotten meat smell. Because if you put meat in a plastic bag, it's going to rot a lot different than if you wrap it in a tea towel and put it in a little hole that you buried, right? You can wrap up a steak in a tea towel and put it in a hole in the ground in your backyard and take it out 2 months later, and you're going to. So, when a lot of new people start the carnivore diet, they report diarrhea.
Yeah.
And I've never really read any science that's conclusive on why that is, but I believe you're repopulating your gut biome. So if you take the average guy who's going to go to Costco and start the carnivore diet, he's repopulating his gut microbiome with fresh meat, totally supply chain protected, right? And
Lars, Goody's taking notes. He's about to go out and dig a hole in the backyard.
yeah, right. Well,
Got my ass.
well, I hadn't had the diarrhea. I was totally acclimated to meats for years. And then I ate that bag of rotten meat and it had no plastic surrounding it. And I had a diarrhea event. It was like, usually I have packs of 12 or 14 steaks, just that's how I buy them. And it was the 13th steak. And I went to sleep in the back of my truck. And as soon as I laid down, I sat back up and I went outside, and the diarrhea event was life-changing for me. It was like
13 is your lucky number, obviously, Lars.
it was it was such a powerful diarrhea, and I felt it never made. I didn't feel weak though. I felt
You felt like Saturn V
Yeah.
to the
Sounded
moon.
like shit.
I just want to, I have 2 points to make in the question, if that's all right with you. So the first thing, I think the rotten thing is so interesting because I actually was reading about Native Americans in the Northeast, and they would take corn and they would like bury it in like the soil, or not in the soil, but like in like streams. And like months later, they would come back, and the way that the dude described it was like it smelled terrible, but it had like this sweet taste that they all just really seemed to enjoy. And the other thing I wanted to say, because you're talking about Native Americans, is I actually had read that the Sioux this is back when you were talking about fasting, that the Sioux actually would go into battle fasted on like 4 days, not eating. And I always wondered like why that is. And I was trying to like research it, and I could like never really find anything. And like that testosterone really like connected a dot for me. So that's really fascinating. And then the other thing I just wanted to ask is like, have you ever, or are you familiar with like pemmican or utilize stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I've eaten it, but not, it's like one of those things that if I can find it, I'll eat it occasionally.
Yeah.
Hey, Lars, just a quick question. When we talk about fasting, we're talking about normal fasting or dry fasting with your clients. Are they allowed to drink anything?
Yeah, we're doing a dry fast. It's the third prolonged fast of my program. We do a 48-hour dry fast on the same day that they have no more poo coming out of them.
Okay, so you do some wet fasting in the first two ones, and the third one is no, sorry. So the first one is a wet fast, and then you have a dry fast after that.
Yeah, so it's like a 4-day fast, and then from hour 96 to day 6, there's no water.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
And then we bring back water into the system, and then we bring back putrid meat into the system, and just little bits, just like I call them, they're primal vaccines. They're primal vaccines is what they are, because the change in your immune
His mind is racing.
Yeah, it's a complete reboot for the system.
It's a complete reboot for the system. And like, because I'm a redhead and fair skinned, my experience with the sun has been so dramatically different. My mother was a feminist, and I grew up on a dairy farm. And I went from breast milk to raw cow's milk, and I breastfed till I was 3. And then my parents said I was just a raw cow's milk kid. I would go to the barn and ask my dad for milk. He'd give me milk, and I would just drink milk all day long. When my mother was not, and I was a top athlete, super healthy child. When I was 10, my mother fell for the PSYOP, and she replaced our whole milk and butter with skim milk and margarine. And at that point,
that would have been the 90s, right?
Yeah. So that would have been in 91, not 90. That would have been in 90. She did that.
Yeah.
And from there, my sunburn started getting bad. Now I'm layered with sunblock and hats in the summer, or I burn. And now, like I try to live in the summer. I live super primally. Like I'm outside the whole spectrum of sunlight. So I train outside, and I can be in the sun 12 hours, no sunblock, no even shade. I'll just work out I live by the beach here. And after that putrid meat incident that I had, I noticed that my ability to both absorb the sun and then shed the sun in the days following just went radically up. It was like, before that, I didn't have a problem really with the sun anymore, because I'd been 2.5 years carnivore. But then after that, it was just like, it was like in the video game when you get the health pack. That's really what it made me feel in my body. So that's like, there's a lot of stuff around putrid meat. Like for the dog sleds up north, they'll bury fermented fish before they have to run a long time. And then they'll feed them the fermented fish, and the dogs just go ape shit. Like fermented meats is a way that you can, it's one of the best ways to feel a natural high.
Lars, do you eat any other fermented foods at all, or just meat? Are you normally fully carnivore, or?
Occasionally I will eat sauerkraut, but now I have a guy in my academy. What I do seems to be the best thing for Parkinson's disease. So I have 2 guys with PD in my academy right now. And because they have PD, they're highly motivated to take every hour of my course for the whole year and do it perfectly. And they're actually both doctors also, if you can believe it. And they're both the same age. And so I get to run a lot of interesting health experiments on them because of their muscle tremors and whatnot. And my first guy, he's been with me 7 months. And at some point, I'm going to be able to take his profile and show what I've done. And it's actually revolutionary because he's gone from sick, masked face, tremors in an arm, no ability to jump. So like his body has gone through a 30-year muscle atrophy, and his coordination and strength, like muscles are 3D instruments, right? You can train them any way you can think about how to train a muscle. You can train it that way and it'll get very good at it over time. Whether it's ping pong or powerlifting, it doesn't matter. So, but if you're strategic about that, and if you use diet, and if you use the gut microbiome, the levels of which we can heal to, the matrix does not want anybody to know about, because it gives me chills to think about, because you take guys who are just completely destructed physically on every level, to the fact that it's now their families are saying, oh, his personality's changed. And you can take that guy, and like my one guy, he's down 50 pounds. He's up 15 pounds of new lean muscle, and he can do comprehensive plyometric jumping exercises. And his symptoms, I would say his symptoms are 90% arrested at this point. And I believe that by the time he's done, I tell him, and that's what we work towards, I'm like, you're going to have like 90%, you're going to have one or two little slivers of this left in you. And that's where we're going to get to. And that's been true for every injury I've had in my body. I broke my back at 20 years old. So I had an L1, L3 burst fracture, and I had a really hard time in CrossFit with it because I would re-injure it all the time. And like, that's an injury that I've spent, more than 2 decades working on. And I have it down to the point where, maybe once every year or two, I'll step off a curb funny and I'll feel just a tiny little shiver of pain into my L1. So I believe like the body doesn't forget anything. It's a habitual instrument, but it also can pretty well totally heal itself in 99% of cases, including medical diagnoses that really don't have any healing.
So what's your thoughts on the neurological side of a carnivore diet? Has it helped you become a more successful entrepreneur?
That's the first time I was an entrepreneur, my whole business was layered with alcohol, and so carbohydrate.
Lars, we need to know, do we have to get back to drinking to be successful, or can we do it without drinking?
I was an atheist till I was 39, and now I have a close relationship with Jesus, and I saw that I could have a business in X. I saw that kind of when I met you, Klaus. I was like, oh, I could make a business of this, but I wasn't ready yet because I hadn't formulated an entrepreneurial model of what that would look like at this stage in my life. I'm like, how do I sell to people? I had only sold to people kind of with quid pro quo backslaps. Like, how do I get an inflated quote in? I feel like most of my first business was a demonic enterprise at the end of the day, where now
the normal way of doing business, basically.
Yeah. But now it's like,
there's more motivation when we can help.
Now I want to share what I've learned with people, and I want to make people healthier. And yeah, I am an entrepreneur now again, I guess. And I've been, I'm on daily sales calls again, but it's completely different. It's just complete honesty. It's completely different. It's completely different. I don't even think about it that much because I'm also still new in my entrepreneurial journey, and like when you go from sleeping in a van and eating steaks on the beach and driving to your kid's hockey tournament, not knowing how you're going to get home with gas. Like I went through deep levels of poverty in my carnivore journey. And now today I get frequent life-changing US money. You know, in a
Do you
US,
think do you think you'd have come out the other side if you weren't following the carnivore diet?
no, I'm an extremist, and I went to sleep one night in Vancouver, probably drunk for 3 days. You know, I just done blow with 2 clients. And every time I shut my eyes, you know, when you take a big hardcovered book and open it up and the pages just rifle through on their own, I kept closing my eyes and I kept having that vision that the story of my life was just randomly, I couldn't even read the own story of my life. After that night, you can't come back from some of these things, right? So today, like I just signed up another PD guy, US guy. You know, he's 5'9", 240 pounds, 60 years old. And like I have a full circadian program that he can follow. And we also now, one of my other guys who came in to my business with me, I also met on X. And like you meet the most incredible people. So this guy, he's an anti-matrix warrior. He's a chemical engineer, and he's working on like not only ingredients, but even the manufacturing processes have no electronics in them. So he's super based. So we're able, because we're producing methylene blue, we're producing supplements, because I'm not a supplement guy, but people who have a serious enough disease like PD or Alzheimer's, I think that supplements are a good thing. Yeah, supplements have an effect in the body. There's a placebo effect of a lot of things also. You need all things. You need a program that is so completely perfect on every level that your chances of winning is in the 90th percentile, because it's life and death, this business. Like I got another guy in, 42 years old, 320 pounds. He messaged me for months on X, and he would say, I feel like I can't even go on. He goes, I'm totally broke. I feel like I can't even go on. And I just keep messaging him. I'm like, bro, you can do this. This can be done. You just have to start. And like, he's like, I have no money. I'm like, don't worry about it. Let's get you fit first. Because I'm at that stage in my business that I can do that, and I happily do it. And like with the carnivore, there's so much news and there's so much information out there. And as carnivore grows and becomes accepted by a wider group of people, it's also going to get watered down. So it's going to become weaker in its effect. And the problem is that we are so sick today that your health has to happen minimally on a 12-month timeline. So when they come in, I say, we're going to think about your health on a 12-month timeline, because it's easy to get the first 20 pounds off them, but they're going to plateau routinely at different times throughout the year. And when they plateau, you have to use a different strategy for every plateau, whether it's exercise or whether it's nutrition, gut health, sleep, cortisol. You got to have a 360-degree view of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
With you seem like you're on a pretty strict diet. Like as far as this conversation has gone, it's like predominantly like a lot of raw meat and red meat at that. And with what you're saying right now about it's being a little bit watered down, what's kind of your perspective on like the optics of like Twitter, where like the community has 16,000 people, right? But 70% of the posts you see is bacon and stuff like that. Like, how do you feel about that in relation to something like, someone that's eating rotten, or sorry, we'll call it fermented.
So if you take, another thing in our carnivore community is we got a lot of people in this are early adopters who are used to taking on new regimes and protocols into their life. They've done it many times before, as I have. Most of the guys in my group they're carnivore aware and they've heard about it, but they're not early adopters, and they're more regular Joes, and they're more metabolically destructive. Well, as you start recovering your entire system, you're going to find that you become adverse to certain things. One of them that I became adverse to was pork. If I eat bacon, a whole pile of bacon now, I can feel that it sits in my gut, and my gut battles with it a little bit and produces some uncomfortable burps. That just tells me it's not digesting it as efficiently as it digests the beef. So as you recover guys' metabolisms, you want to see that they're becoming adverse to some foods, and you want to see that they're becoming more connected to beef. The whole goal is to get them connected to beef so that they can get their maximum nutrient load within the 12-month time horizon.
Absolutely. Do you find that it's, we were discussing this earlier when it comes to if you're trying to give friends and family advice or colleagues in the workplace or the average person, they're more adverse to accepting the advice. But do you find people find you when they need life advice?
Yeah, so I left X for a bunch of months because I saw that I could start a business, but I also didn't feel truly ready to do that. So I went off X, and I kind of went and I just thought about life for 6 or 8 months. Then, God has another plan. So my first client was a Parkinson's client that he put, and I knew this guy in my community, and I actually met him. He's a wealthy doctor, and I met him because I was drywalling his basement. So I would go into his house, and he would be on his treadmill at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I could see he had no clue about working out, and he had no clue about eating, but I could see he was also mentally strong. He was working very hard to get somewhere. I didn't understand at the time that he was sick and he'd been diagnosed with something terrible. So fast forward that to 7 months ago, then I went and talked to him, and I made him a pitch, and he agreed to it. So I started coaching him, and I had never put somebody through all of my protocols. I train him 6 days a week. So 6 days a week, I watch this guy for 2 hours at a time. Put a lot of work into this guy. So when I could see my own protocols in real time on somebody else's profile working super well, that gave me the confidence to train more. So then I started training groups of boys for free all summer doing dryland and hockey. And that really got me, I'm like, okay, I know I can train people very well now. So after I had that, I started going on to X more and more. And so you need to get to a point where people are coming to you. Back to your
Absolutely.
talking about this with family and coworkers. Here's how I'd answer that. Don't tell them. Just be such a shining beacon of testosterone. They'll come to you naturally. Testosterone it's such a powerful, powerful hormone. It's a leadership hormone. So I have had high testosterone. I have had my testosterone checked in my life, but I haven't had it checked in the last 5 years. And I won't get it checked because I have all my natural signals, and I can tell how cortisol affects it, right? And I can tell how different life events will affect it. But now I've had my business 7 months, and I've had 7 months of calm, high example leadership that's manifested itself. So people now come to me, and they come to me for leadership, and so I have this one boy on the team. He's a 12-year-old boy. He got dropped from an older group. He's obese. He's got a single mother, and he goes to public school. So he spends all day long with his masculinity attack. And I'm a homeschooler, and I've gone through the line codes in the public school system, and masculinity is attacked today on such a deep level. It breaks my heart. So you take this kid, and he's been with me now 2 weeks, right? I've had this kid for 2 weeks on my team, and he cries, he falls down, he works hard, he cries. So I just keep injecting masculinity into him. Like, bro, you have to do your 20 burpees. When he cries, shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Breathe in and out your nose. 20. But, that guy tripped me. I'm hurt. I go, are you hurt or are you injured? These are like masculine, fatherly concepts, right? I'm not yelling at him out of anger. I'm yelling at him out of love, right? Like, come on, pick yourself up. You can do this. And that's antithetical to the feminist model of parenting. Are you okay? Are you hungry? Who did that to you? And these kids they're projected on
victim.
What's that?
Victim mentality. Yeah.
Victim mentality, feminist matrix. So you take that kid, and when he leaves practice now, he looks at me like a puppy dog that he doesn't even want to leave me after practice, right? He's connected to that masculine energy, and like the flame that I put in him will never be extinguished. And with kids, it's like, we're not going to be successful getting rid of pizza day at school, and we're not going to be successful stopping kids from eating Halloween candy. But if we're not dogmatic about it, right? If we're not dogmatic about this, we can absolutely give them a strategy so that boy eats a higher amount of protein pounds in a year compared to when he did last year. And if you take a 10-year-old kid and you can get 20 or 30% more protein into him over the course of a year, he's going to eat 15 or 20% less carbs and sugar, and he's going to be 20% healthier.
Yeah. Lars, when all is said and done and you're going into the ground in your coffin, what do you want people to say at your funeral? How do you want to be remembered? What is your legacy?
He did his very best for us. That's like, I was a bad example to my kids in my first life. And I was ignorant to that until 2016. And that podcast from Rogan and Peterson shined a light on me, and I realized I was a bad example. So now I try to live as a good example, and I have an energy about me that a lot of people who are afraid of health and they're afraid of starting that journey, I find that they rely upon my energy at the beginning to get them over the first few humps. Like the one guy who I just had come in, I said, you're scared right now. And I said, I'm going to carry you for a little while until you can do this. And I said, but I want you to work hard at it because you're 320 pounds and I can't carry a 320 pound man forever.
Great.
But yeah, this guy, he's down 16 pounds in 5 days.
Fantastic.
That's fantastic going, yeah. This is exciting.
Yeah, it has to be distributed strategically. One thing I want to tell your corner of the internet and your group, like, we don't want to build any silos around this, and we need to build businesses. Carnivore businesses need to be built in a way that they can adopt people into it who otherwise would have no chance of getting into carnivore. Otherwise, this is going to become a niche thing like CrossFit, where a certain profile, like Ironman, like CrossFit, where a certain profile type is going to become attracted to it and do it. But
it's basically going to stay an alpha male elite type thing. Yeah.
But
that's
right.
Yeah.
Keep the barriers, like keep the definition of carnivore loose or keep them strict and well defined.
Keep the nutritional aspects. I think they should be talked about less, and I think the societal aspect should be talked about more. And really, it's like, so every year I go through the same thing with my son. Now is homeschooled, but my 5-year-old, 6-year-old girl now, she's in grade 1. So she goes to school with a pepperoni stick and an egg and some yogurt the first day of school. And then I get an email back right away saying, you have to send her with cheese because the other kids will give her a granola bar, right? So the teachers email me and they say, no, you have to do this. So what I tell people is this: anywhere where you can fight the matrix, you actually have to fight it. Don't do it with friends and family and coworkers, maybe coworkers, but do it with bosses. Like if people are doing pizza parties I've door knocked businesses and I go in and I've said to them, do you do pizza parties? Have you heard the meme about how stupid they are? And do you have a problem with sitting? And another thing I did in the summer is I put a sign up at the beach and I said, we are the lowest testosterone generation of men in human history. I had a sign up on the beach I put that up on the beach, and I sat there all day and I cooked steaks and I worked out with the kids in the sand. And it's on this long esplanade in a tourist town. And I just watched all the guys walk back and forth past that sign. And at the beginning, guess who the first guys were that to stop and engage in that confrontational message? Guess who it was?
Liberals.
No, it was 17-year-old. It was a beautiful 17-year-old boy who's never been low testosterone a day in his life. And he comes up to the sign and he goes, what's this about? Like, he's challenging his environment. He's got
He wants more.
Yeah.
And streams and streams of 20 and 25-year-old boys walk by, and they're holding Happy Dad containers of liquor, and they got fat girlfriends, and they've got shitty tattoos already. We do not want to lose that cohort of men. Like, I'm a big hockey guy. You have to win with beta males. You can't win in life unless you got beta males on your team. If you're the alpha chimpanzee and you don't bring the beta males along with you, they're going to fucking take you out at some point.
Yeah.
And they also control the narrative a little bit. Or like, I had an example of fighting the Matrix myself, where like on a Friday in downtown Chicago, it's like 95 degrees, super hot. We're drinking, we're walking to a riverside, right? Like, I just took my shirt off because I'm hot. And like, this guy's like, put your shirt back on, man. Like, he's all insecure. It's like, I'm supposed to put my shirt on because you feel insecure about yourself. Like, I just don't get it. You know, why do we abide by the beta thought process?
I live in a small town. My best friend in the town, he's like a super base guy. He's on X, Carnivore. And he's like, you're going to last 6 months coaching because they're going to kick you out. I fight the matrix vehemently. I fight the school districts. On my team, like, I fight the feminist narrative, and I call it out. I call it out all the time. Like, for example, the mothers on the team, I go, you're not bringing sugar into the dressing room after practice. And I'll tell the mothers, like, I do it in little ways. I'm like, they'll say, hey, I need you to text me. I go, I'm not going to text you. I fight the matrix everywhere I can. It's all control, and it's all rooted in food at its primal level.
How often do you have to fight the matrix with your own community, like with your clients? Like, do they face a lot of cognitive dissonance, or is that not a thing?
No, so they're not paying me any money unless they're on board for it. I'm not here to sell them on Carnivore professionally. In my community, like as a coach, and I offer a lot of free training programs for boys in my community. That's the primary way I fight the matrix today. I'm trying to take a cohort of beta males and make them alpha, and imagining my own self in this community in a decade. And I'm like, okay, if I see half as many beta males on the beach in a decade, it won't take much for us to win. We only need to get 20% of the beta males into this. If we do that, the women will shut up, they'll follow them, and they'll come. It seems like it's impossible right now if you go on social media and you see, an overweight dog guy with a Christmas sweater on with a post simping for his woman on a post. It's like, how are we ever going to beat this, right?
Yeah, Lars, I suppose the payment when it comes to the program is more of a dedication, so you're able to remove the signal from the noise, so you're not getting tons of people messaging saying, oh, I'm going to do it, can you help me? You have to make that commitment to then, you get the devoted, dedicated people involved from the start.
I've sold $50 programs to people who had no interest, who were never going to do it. And I've sold $14,000 programs to people who absolutely need it. And I'm not really dogmatic about the money. The money
But Lars, don't you think that if it's not an amount which means something to the person, then they're not going to take it seriously, and if it's not and if the effort is not something which is, let's say, at least semi-high, it's also not going to mean anything. So it needs to feel challenging, a little bit difficult, not too difficult, and it has to cost as much as it seems to be worth, or maybe a little bit less.
It has to be 12 months long. It has to cost $3,000 US. And like, then with guys in my group, I have guys who help me on the business end, and they're like, hey, you have to have a liability form and all this stuff. So I tell them when they come in, I said, there's no refunds. I go, if you break your leg, it's the same program. I go, if you die, I'll give the refund back to your family. But it's like, I don't do business in the standard way of doing it anymore. With guys getting in, what I would say is this: if they sense enough positive leadership and motivation from you over time, and if they have enough pain in their life, at some point they're going to reach out to you and they're going to want some of your positive energy. And if you can truly help them at that point, then you should do it. I think all guys who are over 30 and need to do carnivore, the standard truck driver guy, yeah, he should pay $3,000 for a year, and that money would, if he pays $3,000, he's going to get more dialed than if he pays $50 a month.
Yeah,
he's going to be more serious about it. So definitely that's true.
100%. Yeah, go ahead. Good.
Definitely that's true. But at the same time, like my Carnivore Academy, I think it's going to grow to something beautiful, because now I also have like a layer of guys in it who are going to grow their own businesses alongside me, because one guy's in water, another guy, he's in tallow. So I want to grow Carnivore Academy similar to Jordan Peterson, but also vertically integrated, so we can solve every problem for an entire household, endocrine safe products, get rid of their teenage daughters' makeups, give them all the information to do that. So like when a guy signs up with me now, we send him an endocrine safe home care package that's loaded with carnivore propaganda.
Endocrine system, that is like your, that's like, what you call it? Hormones, right?
Yeah.
So I guess like, obviously like hormones, we're all aware of them, but it's something that's just kind of been in like the back of my mind. And I just learned about this like anti-diuretic hormone and how like just simple things, like if you take a sip of water, that can signal to your body to start eliminating water. So like simple things like not drinking will hormonally signal to your body to preserve water. It's just so, I didn't even click, because I think a lot of us look at it very like materially, like if I eat this, I'll get this result. But the cool thing about hormones is like you have to work for it. There's nothing like what do you don't go and buy no water. Like you just don't drink. You have to push yourself. So I thought that was interesting.
It is. And like our hormones, that's where our body meets the environment. Everything from the environment produces a hormonal response. Even by looking at the sun, even by looking at something, it produces a hormonal response. If I'm at the beach and I see a 20-year-old in a bikini, it produces a hormonal response. So today I view everything through my hormones. I view people through their hormones. I see somebody and I'm like, okay, he's high cortisol, low testosterone. I apply these different words to his own hormonal function to understand where he's coming from. You know, fear is one of the most powerful things to signal in your workouts to elicit positive hormonal responses. So I do a lot of workouts and I put a fear aspect into them. Like I'll swim in cold water out to the lake far from shore until I feel scared, then swim back. I'll swim underwater at the pool and just as far as I can until I'm petrified that I can't get to the last 6 inches up to the water. And like, because just like to your point, men who have a lot of fear in them have been avoiding fear.
Yeah, I think that's true.
They're afraid of a dietary change. They're a feminized guy who's low testosterone is actually, he's been taken over by fear. It's in every one of his decisions and it's in every one of his responses.
Yeah.
So
Weak men create tough times.
Yeah, it feels very intuitively true. That's for sure. Anyway, Lars, I think we're kind of we're getting closer to wrapping up. I wanted to ask you, before we go, what would you be your main simple pieces of advice to our listeners and maybe newbies? What are the most important things they could start with, both in terms of diet and in terms of exercise?
I think it's a mistake when people start this by themselves because you really only have one test group then. And I know that's true for myself because I look at where I've gotten to today. And now I'm on this, my next journey is to 6% body fat. So I have this big challenge ahead of me. And if you're going to start carnivore, you want to start it with another group of people. It's a major, major, major game changer. And you can tinker on it yourself, but you're going to become lost even if you're perfect at it, you're going to become lost in the weeds and you're not going to be able to take in new information and you're not going to be able to know how to apply that to your own hormonal profile with the best chances of success. So I have a lot of guys who, I've gone through days in my business where I've been cold DMing 100 people off X. And the other thing I would tell people is this: if you're going to go carnivore, get out of the gym and work out outside for a few months. I go to the gym in the winter, but I see people who are adopting carnivore into their already existing lifestyle. And it's just one aspect of our circadian rhythm. Eating, it's just one little aspect. Our circadian rhythm and our hormonal function, it's 360 degrees, it's 24 hours a day, it's 365 days a year. So you want to adopt that really comprehensively. And if you do that in a group or with friends or pay a guy like me or pay somebody else, you're going to capture way more. When you start this journey, your goal should be to say, okay, I need to recapture pretty much every system in my body. So a lot of people who come into it, they're like, yeah, okay, I got some body fat and stuff, but I go to the gym, I'm pretty healthy. But they're going to find out what I found. I was 10 years in CrossFit competing and I was unhealthy the whole time I did it. I know that now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
a fatty liver and things like that. Anyway, Lars, with the 6% body fat, let me just a question on that. So what's your time scale for that?
Well, I'm going to try to do it as fast as I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fast it all out. I'm just not going to eat, just like my hand. I'm just not going to eat until I'm 6% body fat.
I was just wondering if we could make a challenge out of it, who gets there first.
Okay, I would love it.
I think you're leaner than I am at the moment. I'm pretty lean, but 6% that's a hard one. That's a hard one.
There's a guy online named Greg O'Gallagher, and he's young and he's been high testosterone his whole life, and he's got a fitness program and it's geared for 20-year-olds and it's got carbs in it and it's not what we do, but he's also has never really suffered metabolic destruction.
Yeah.
And he's been lean his whole life, but he had some interesting things to say about the effects of being 6% versus 10%. Mm-hmm. And I know the effects of being 10% versus 12 or 13. Like I usually sit around 12 and then in the summer I'm 10. In the summertime, like here's a primal effect. Never once would a 20-year-old beautiful woman on the beach like visibly stare at me at 12 or 13%. But at 10%, they absolutely do. And probably controversial information. I don't pursue them or anything. I'm a normal guy with daughters. I'm not interested in women that young, but maybe 25. But there's something to do with when your hormones and your physique is at its absolute peak, the like the study set of women who are interested in you goes up exponentially. Again, it's the Matrix would never want to study that, but it's very true. And Greg talks about that too. The response from women is radically different between body fat percentages.
So you're going to go for 6, but and fasting is going to be what you're going to do. So you're not going to eat for until Christmas time, or how are you going to do it?
I think it'll take me 15 days to get to 6%.
15 days. Okay. So you're going to do it basically a 2-week fast.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Starting now.
Forward to it. And so it's
the last thing I want to
October.
guys on
We're recording.
is this burpees. Burpees is our first workouts we do when we go from crawling to walking. And nothing has been more successful in my own journey than burpees for body fat. And I don't know why that is, because I can do huge, crazy CrossFit workouts, and you'd think that would do the same thing. But there's something about burpees, and I thought a lot about this, and here's where I'm at with it. When you watch a baby go from crawling to walking, that's like a 2 or 3 month phase, right? And in that 2 or 3 month phase, that baby pretty much just does burpees all fucking day long.
I love that logic, man.
And
awesome.
some of our deepest muscle memories are in that. And when we capture that, also a baby goes from high body fat to low body fat from when they go from crawling to walking.
That's true.
They lose all their body fat. So if you're out there and you got a lot of body fat to lose, my message to you would be this: wake up in the morning and just start by doing burpees for 2 minutes. That's your main exercise to focus on if you're really out of shape.
I'm taking up on that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
All right, guys. So I'm just gonna wrap up very, very quickly here. And thank you very much, Lars, for coming on Low Carb Logic.
I'm off the train now, and I got a hockey. I got training, hockey, and then Thanksgiving dinner at my dad's, where he's going to try to feed me pork, and I'm going to reject it. He's going to give me a dirty look.